So welcome, our brilliant and beloved colleague Ushnish. We so appreciate your consistent leadership and solidarity as always, and your consistent commitment to community economic development. And as always, at Setsi, we begin all things by giving thanks to our creator, by giving thanks to the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We give thanks to all our ancestors, all those who toil without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So Ushnish, can you please share a bit about your remarkable work with our listeners and viewers?
Sure. So I'm an assistant professor of community economic and social development at Algoma University. And Algoma University has three campuses, one in Sault Ste. Marie, one in Timmins, one in Brampton. So I work on the one in Brampton. My current research work is on smart cities and their risks and benefits. So far, what I've found is that the way technology is being implemented in cities is benefiting some people, but also creating risks for others. So if you have a lot of cameras, for example, you can, count the cars and traffic and people, but you can also use them for surveillance and law enforcement. So that's where my current research is at. I also am focused on the role of the nonprofit sector, the social economy, which is how I'm connected to Setsi. And I think the nonprofit sector has a big role to play in terms of mitigating those risks for vulnerable communities. So the nonprofit sector has to take on a leadership role in terms of identifying those new risks that are emerging through new technology for vulnerable communities, and to be addressing them proactively rather than reactively. So the other part of my work is teaching. So Algoma is a very teaching-focused university. We have many international students from different countries: India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Nigeria. So, taking these international students and engaging them with the social sector, with the nonprofit sector, doing, projects with answering questions asked by the social sector, getting them interested in working in the social sector after they graduate. So that has been another area of my work. So those two have been the main sort of thrusts of effort. Other than that, I volunteer for various things. So for example, I'm the co-president of the Association of Nonprofit and Social Economy Research, which is the main organization that brings together academics and practitioners in the nonprofit field in Canada. We do an annual conference. We have occasional educational webinars and things like that. I'll stop there and we can continue with your questions.
That's incredible. Such a wide body of work. You brought me to build and to support your class before, but I didn't know the breadth of your work until today. So once again, I appreciate your leadership. So my next question: what's inspiring you right now? What has you curious, or what's keeping you up at night?
There's things that do inspire, things that do keep me up at night. So I'll start with the inspiration part. So Canada as a country, as a nation, is a nation of immigrants. And I think I'm in a place today where, again, we have a lot of international students who, most of them do, the vast majority of them do want to be immigrants to Canada. So we can conscientize them. We can make them aware of social and environmental issues and the ongoing injustices, to make them the kinds of citizens that we want in Canada. We're not just maybe economic migrants, but also aware of the social and environmental and cultural challenges that Canada has, and that the nonprofit sector can contribute to. So that inspires me in, seeing those sparks once in a while in the student population. What keeps me up at night? Back to the research work on technology and surveillance, and how that is increasing at such a fast pace that the civil society organizations and even the government and its laws are not keeping up. And the damage is being done. There are people of color being arrested because of wrongful recognition through facial recognition technology and so on. That is not a hypothetical thing. It is ongoing, and in the present. It's just happening in pockets that maybe not are highlighted as well. So I'm part of this. Again, as a volunteer activity, I'm part of this group that is keeping a track of all the issues with AI and algorithms in general, and there's a publicly available database of it, and there's a website. So I help in maintaining the list of events, now getting more involved in annotating them so they're publicly more accessible, available. Again, for me, part of it's this lack of information. So if you know that there have been, half a dozen Black men that have been wrongfully arrested, in the United States because of facial recognition technology, then you'd be more apt to support a ban on facial recognition technology in your own city. But if you didn't know that fact, then you might say, hey, maybe it's a good thing we have this technology around, right? So, just that's what keeps me up at night, that relentless pace of implementation of new technology, collection of data that's going on, and that our institutions, whether they're government or nonprofit sector organizations, are not keeping up, are not are becoming more and more reactive and are not proactive.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the documentary Coded Bias by a beloved sister. Also, you're familiar with it. Yeah, like there's
right? Yeah.
There you go. There's so much work to be done in this area. As you know, there's work being done by the Digital Governance Council, the Canadian Center for Nonprofit Digital Resilience, the Tamarack Institute, the Folks in Ontario Trillium Foundation, and so many others. So once again, I applaud your stellar leadership as always, sir, because the facial recognition technology isn't taking into account conscious and unconscious bias of the programmers and software developers. So the fact remains that it's very dangerous. And I think that the work that you're doing needs to be applauded. So once again, I give thanks for your leadership and diligence as always. So my next question, what challenges and barriers do you face in your work, and how are you and your colleagues working to overcome them?
So the challenges and barriers, maybe I'll riff off what you mentioned in terms of there are some institutions working on some of these issues, such as data governance in the nonprofit sector. The challenges, I think, are, again, it's very reactive. The solutions, I participated in some of the meetings for the Canadian nonprofit data governance committee. I forget the exact name, but a lot of the people with the knowledge there, and are people from the private sector. And sure, we need that knowledge from people from the private sector, but where is that leadership from the nonprofit sector saying, hey, we are different, our values are different, the way we do things are different, rather than just adopting whatever the private sector does, which is not necessarily aligned with our values, which won't get us towards the goals we need to get to. The additional challenge is, again, that going back to that pace of technology development, and I'll point to AI, and pretty well every organization, they're experimenting with AI, right? And some of them are starting to get called out on it, saying, Air Canada just lost a court case where the AI chatbot gave advice and the advice was wrong. So there's a lot of nonprofits, using chatbots, and they're now experimenting with AI chatbots, and they're not necessarily thinking about, hey, what is the liability if this chatbot gives the wrong advice? And so, with a lot of tools being just available at the click of a few, buttons, it almost seems like that, hey, we should be using this tool just like we use Google as a search engine and other things. But there are so many issues with AI, the underlying biases, racial bias, gender bias, and other forms of bias. Again, it's an issue of awareness. Like, I think a lot of nonprofits, their stated values are all about equity and diversity and so on, but their practices, such as, hey, if there's a free AI tool, I'm just going to use it to create my newsletter. And hey, hold on, maybe that newsletter has implicit biases that you don't even know it has. So that's kind of the issue that the nonprofit sector has always been in a funding starvation cycle, and that kind of competition for funding and the lack of resources that are available. So if there is an available tool like ChatGPT or an AI tool to create newsletters, which require a human being many hours to do, like, let's just use it and do it. And so I think part of it's raising that awareness of, when you're using these tools, they do have all these implicit biases, and you have to be really careful. You're exposing yourself to a number of liabilities that the courts are starting to come down on, saying, look, just because you used AI to generate this doesn't mean you are absolved of any responsibility. You, the human being, are responsible for whatever you put out, whether it's AI-based, Google search based, written by yourself. So that's kind of the biggest challenge and barrier that I'm facing right now, is just educating the existing nonprofits when there's these tools that are so freely and cheaply, if you will, available, that the temptation to use them and maybe not understand the risks, maybe ignore the risks, is much greater. The benefits are so great and easy and accessible, right? I can send out like a dozen tweets every day using ChatGPT. Why would I need a person? So that's kind of the benefits are so, the understanding, I should say, of the benefits are so lopsided that people either don't invest the time to understand the risks, or even if they know some of the risks, they just kind of ignore them and say, well, that's okay. Yeah, I'll take the risk, or I'm just going to ignore this risk while using this new technology. So that's kind of the biggest barrier and challenge that I wanted to raise in this context. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. The fact remains there are some deep risks. And I think that there is a lack of intergenerational collaboration around this. We had a series of 3 town halls last year around AI and the sector, and one of them was very contentious in terms of how some of our elders felt about the technology, in terms of some of the deep fakes that were using our ancestors like Rosa Parks and Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and how some young people feel that it's a very useful tool. So once again, there's an intergenerational gap. There's a shy new object thing. There's folks always want to be the early adopters. And I think once again that we need to come at this from a place of wisdom and prudence, because some of the godfathers and godmothers of this technology have warned us, not just as a society, but as a species, about some of the challenges with this. So my last question to you is, do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
So again, be really aware of the risks of the new technologies that are coming up, and that don't be kind of just sold on the benefits, which is kind of drowning out the kind of people that are raising the risks. And again, I want to point out that the people raising the risks are, men and women of color, Joy Buolamwini, Timnit Gebru, who got fired from Google for raising some of these risks. Ruha Benjamin, who has written some excellent books on how some of these issues, including these biases, are not a bug of the technology, it's a feature of the technology. And she draws those historical connections about how some of these technologies are intended to discriminate. So that's kind of one of the sort of calls to action, just to be follow these authors, follow Timnit Gebru and Joy Buolamwini and Ruha Benjamin, Safia Umaja Noble. Follow them on your socials, read their books, then you will be much more aware of the issues and risks of these technologies. And then you can decide when to use them and when not to use them. And again, I want to say, I'm not saying don't use these technologies out, but there are places to use them, there are places not to use them. There are, awareness of risks that you need to be keep on kind of educating yourself on. And again, there are people, and I'll put in maybe two websites into the chat. One is an AI incident database that is maintained by Stanford. And again, it is collecting those AI incidents and making sure that we are all aware. So you can subscribe to the newsletter, and it'll keep you aware. The other one, the one I'm actually working on, is the algorithm and AI incident repository, which is a little bit broader than AI. So the first one, it's only the AI instance. The second one is algorithm, because many of the algorithms that we know of have all kinds of issues, and they don't have to be AI to discriminate, right? They don't have to be AI to have problems and issues. So these two databases, people are inputting incidents. Like I said, you can sign up to the newsletters too, so you're not going there and checking for them every time. They'll keep you updated once a week and so on. So one of these days, I'm gonna see how many of these incidents are related to nonprofits, and also how many are related to Canada. But they're all there, and it's useful to learn from similar incidents happening across the world. If there's something, if an algorithm is discriminating against people of color receiving welfare payments in the Netherlands, I can bet you there is a similar algorithm doing similar discriminatory things somewhere in Canada and the US, right? So it's useful to learn from these issues being identified elsewhere, to exchange knowledge. If you yourself, have an inkling that something's wrong, something's not quite right, then call it out. In the example was Amazon, and they were developing this HR system based on all the resumes of the successful people in Amazon. And of course, the vast majority of successful people in Amazon were men. So the AI system started rejecting all women, and doing it intelligently, not saying, hey, this particular college or school is a women's college, or this person said on the resume they're part of the women's chess club, so that's a woman, let's reject that resume. So if you see something that's not quite right, and they caught it before they released it into the public, thankfully, but it did make the news, because somebody leaked that information, right, saying, hey, look, we fumbled, we kind of made an error of judgment in what data we fed into this algorithm, this AI system. So if you see that going on in your own organization, call it out, call it out internally in the safe ways you can, publicly if you need to reference. There are anonymous ways to report those issues, like these databases. And the more we know what's going on, and if there's something that we should be paying attention to, that's kind of the key to addressing and mitigating these new risks that are being created by these implementation of the new technologies.
Indeed. Thank you so much for your leadership, sir, and your tenacity. The amount of information I get from you and the amount of work that you're doing on these issues is overwhelming and remarkable. And once again, I just appreciate your consistent solidarity and leadership. And as always at Setsi, we close all conversations and interviews the way we began. By giving thanks to our creator, by giving thanks to the original stewards of the various lands around. We give thanks to all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. We should just thank you for all that you do for so many. I so appreciate you, sir.
Thanks, Victor.